the protection of our planet is particularly important and heartfelt subject of mine. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to share with you today a number of ideas, concerns, and solutions on the future of our planet against a backdrop marked by increasing the global temperatures and the consequences that they generate. A dramatic situation that was confirmed in a recent, the recent release of the first part of the report of the IPCC, the UN body, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Whether our individual circumstances, whatever our priorities and our difficulties, the climate is a global issue which must unite us, drawing our attention to a human common, to a humanity that's common to all of us. It must also unite us so that we are able to implement concerted actions at all levels across every continent. In this respect, I believe that the issue of global warming, although it represents an unprecedented threat to human history, can serve as a vehicle for breakthrough progress. It is this progress that I would like to talk about to you today. Our planet is currently at a turning point in its history, a history which we are all very much dependent on. After hundreds of years during which humanity has appeared to face inexhaustible elements, we now know that nature is fragile, a delicate balance that humans are currently upsetting in many aspects. The irreparable damage to biodiversity, the threat to irreplaceable ecosystems, the overexploitation of increasingly rare resources, and unprecedented climatic upheavals. With all their trail of disruption, they are today the realities that nobody can dispute. The question is no longer whether our societies are damaging the planet. The question is whether we are capable of mitigating or stopping such damage. Although we have an increasingly sound scientific knowledge of this issue, the political tools that we have available at our disposition remain inadequate. These problems are not among those that simple casuality is enough to explain or contain. They are the result of a slow and complex process, or processes, with many indirect causes. They are the outcome of a collective malfunction of our civilization. Of course, it does not mean questioning the necessity for progress, the demand for comfort, and the need for freedom which inspire our contemporaries. No more than it means trampling the legitimacy of sovereign populations to determine their own destinies. The environmental struggle will be won through awareness and responsibility. The responsibility of the people concerned about preserving their future and their freedom. Because nobody can create an independent destiny when the very framework of one's existence is at danger. In the face of a crisis of a new dimension, we must broaden our outlook, not to think of just our own interests and our own lives, but also to consider future generations, not to confine our responsibilities to within our own borders, but to look beyond, where the future of all of us is at stake. In order to do this, the preservation of our planet requires us to implement several types of solutions. I see at least three. The first one is technical or technological solutions that are to be brought to the development of cleaner energy and its more efficient use. Political solutions through the implementation of more effective international regulations, and local solutions through the protection of certain particularly important and endangered areas. The first approach, the development of non-greenhouse gas emitting energies such as wind, hydro, tidal, solar, geothermal, biomass, and agrofuels. These energies benefit today from significant progress which, though they do not yet allow us to hope to relinquish fossil fuels immediately, they should encourage us to preserve and to persevere in our efforts which could also lead to efficient results in carbon capture and storage systems for fossil fuels. We know that the search for cleaner, inexpensive energy in sufficient quantities to be used by everyone will take some time. Therefore, we need to begin now by intensifying these initiatives by exploring every solution. I'm thinking of particular in clean vehicles, which are currently showing positive progress. Due to its importance in our civilization, the car must be at the forefront of the development of new energies. And it is increasingly so, as I see from year to year in Monaco, where for almost 20 years we have been making significant efforts, in particular financial, to promote the use of clean vehicles. Consequently, we have developed, with extremely encouraging results, a fleet of electric or hybrid vehicles, of which I myself am a user. Of course, we know that at the moment these innovations have a cost, which may seem an obstacle given the current economic situation. But isn't it our responsibility to look beyond the short-term vision which leads to plundering the planet to obtain the most polluting energies at low cost, to the detriment of our children? It is not our duty to make the investment and effort necessary so that tomorrow these energies become affordable. Another key aspect in energy efficiency is the fact of consisting of all the more effective use of energy resources available today. My foundation, as you've seen, is actively working in this area, both through the promotion of simple principles and an exemplary approach within the premises that it occupies. By combining these two elements, innovative energies and energy efficiency, we can draw the high-performance model. Given the current technological possibilities, building on this mix, the Principality of Monaco at its own level and with its own constraints is aiming for carbon neutrality by the year 2050. Together with this initial path of action to mitigate climate change, a political effort must be made to promote the establishment of more binding international regulations. Such issues should be dealt with in multilateral forums, and first and foremost within the United Nations. It has been one of my active priorities for many years, since the first UN conference I attended in Rio more than 20 years ago. Since then, I've taken part in most of the major international forums and meetings dedicated to climate with a determination, but also with lucidity. I have seen changes that I believe are significant. In 20 years, considerable progress has been made, not only with regard to growing awareness of the dangers linked to climate change and global warming, but also concerning the implementation of measures designed to address this issue. We must not give in to fatalism. The sustainable policies currently implemented in many countries would have been inconceivable a short while ago. The global awareness we are witnessing is one of the milestones of the last few decades. These changes are not enough to truly reverse the current trend. If we want to move further ahead and effectively combine all efforts, it is essential to set binding international standards, which alone are capable of prompting each of us to assume his and her responsibilities. These standards must, of course, take into consideration the situation of each country, its history and its level of development, but they must be of a decisive nature, failing which they will remain vastly insufficient. There are, of course, high ambitions. The disappointments of the last summits devoted to the environment, and in particular the most recent one, which I attended in Rio in June of last year, are a striking reminder of the profound differences that exist between countries on these issues. However, this difficulty should not discourage us. In fact, it should have quite the opposite effect. It should spur us on to continue our efforts with conviction and force and more commitment than ever. Because the men and women living on this planet are becoming increasingly aware of their responsibilities. They are becoming more and more concerned about the lack of respect for the land of their children. And I know that their determination is our greatest ally in being able to convince those who still need convincing. A major groundswell, I think, is underway, which can strengthen our action. It also entails and leads to the third element I wish to mention, a particular focus on a few highly sensitive areas whose influence on the climate and on biodiversity conservation is a decisive factor. I'm thinking of the polar regions. Whether it is climate change mitigation through the Gulf Stream system, through the entrapment of certain greenhouse gases, or by the reflection of solar light by the white ice, or the preservation of biodiversity through the importance, scarcity, and the extremely fragile nature of ecosystems in these extreme regions, the poles are of capital importance to all of us. Yet these sanctuaries are in danger. Climate change has reduced the polar ice to unprecedented levels. Even if, as you may know, the sea ice pack at the end of this summer is quite a bit larger than that it was last year. But the average trend over the last few years is undoubtedly toward a reduction, accentuating the effects of global warming and opening up prospects that are economically attractive but with enormous potential risks. Whether it is by the exploitation of offshore hydrocarbons, fishing, or shipping, all the elements are currently there for these last sanctuaries, until now more or less preserved, to be subjected to exploitation practices which must be limited in order not to pose a threat. Current tools and inadequate controls are unfortunately the norm, but we must set these new control standards for such a development. We need everyone's goodwill, and in particular that of your great country, which bears the heritage of a long tradition of exploration and knowledge of the polar regions, which plays a key role in these regions. I know President Putin is eager to take concrete steps, which he just confirmed a few weeks ago at the recent Third International Arctic Forum, the Arctic, a territory of dialogue, last month in Salakard. He has stressed that maintaining a balance between economic activity, human presence, and the preservation of the natural environment was a priority for him. President Putin confirmed his plan to extend the network of conservation areas of nature and wildlife in the region. To preserve the poles, we need to invent innovative solutions. Marine protected areas are such a solution, enabling us to regulate activities in accordance with responsible principles, and they have already proven their worth. By preserving the fauna and flora in these areas, it is indeed possible to sustain and to sustainably regenerate the ecosystems concerned and provide for rational and long-term exploration. In the Arctic, in particular, the establishment of such marine areas would help us to protect the most fragile zones and to prevent the increasing number of drilling and fishing activities or shipping routes from permanently destroying the wealth of this region. It is not a matter of calling into question the sovereignty of the Arctic states, but of inventing a new way of managing certain areas, such as those situated around Franz Joseph Land. And I know President Putin shares the same concerns. It would also be necessary to establish a status of the international waters. They make up the high seas portion of the Arctic Ocean. Such an initiative would create an area preserved for scientific and peaceful research, as was done in the Antarctic just over 50 years ago with the Antarctic Treaty. This treaty has proven its usefulness, and we now know the need to think about how to guarantee its sustainability. It would be dangerous for the sake of short-term economic interests to relinquish the indisputable guarantees it has permitted in terms of environmental preservation. New solutions must be implemented, and I believe it is necessary to supplement these protective measures provided for by this treaty with the creation of MPAs, marine protected areas, here also. It is the essence of the proposal which I support for a marine area in the Ross Sea and the western regions of Antarctica. I hope that that your country, Russia, will set an example for this too, and to honor its great tradition, make the cause of the poles a major commitment, so that the principles of sustainability founded on science will ensure their future. In these emblematic regions, part of our future is at stake. Our biological future, since the conditions for life yet to come are under pressure here, but also our political and moral future. As we must be able to formulate a new, peaceful, and impartial will to build a better world for our children and to battle the threats facing our environment all together. Each of us is responsible for everything, wrote the great author Dostoevsky. The situation of our planet should remind us of our responsibilities for ourselves, but even more for future generations. Thank you very much.